Hi, everyone. My name is Giorgia, and I'm the health science specialist here at Clinique la Prairie in Montreux, Switzerland. And I'm a biologist and a nutritionist. And I did my PhD here in Switzerland. And the main topic was menopause and nutrition. So thank you so much for having me today here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for introducing yourself, Giorgia. So my name is Mirthe. I'm a functional medicine practitioner based in London, but I used to be out in Verbier, Switzerland a lot, so I love Montreux. We'll be talking about inflammation today and what the impact of inflammation is on healthy aging, longevity, and health span and optimization in general. Now, people often think of inflammation as being a purely bad thing, but actually inflammation is a very important process in the body that helps the immune system basically produce inflammation to fight off infections, heal cuts. So it's a very important process if it's an acute short-term reaction. But when it starts to linger and doesn't go away when it should, then it turns into this chronic lingering fire that starts to degrade our system. And in the short term, that can have all these niggly symptoms as a result, such as brain fog and fatigue and joint aches and maybe anxiety, bloating, eczema, those kinds of symptoms, PCOS, hormonal issues, endometriosis. Those are all inflammatory conditions that make our life less pleasant and decrease quality of life. But then if it stays in the system for a long time, it has been shown to really cause a lot of chronic illnesses. And I'll pass back to Giorgia to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, exactly. So, as you were mentioning, we can talk about acute inflammation and even chronic inflammation. So there are two different things. So the chronic inflammation is, in fact, it's a long term, and it's a persistent immune response that actually occurs when the body continues to send inflammatory signals, even when there is no longer the trigger factor, like infection or injury. And unlike the acute inflammation, as you were correctly saying, which is a short-lived and visible reaction, the chronic inflammation can last months, even years. And it's a silent or even hidden event and may damage healthy tissues and organs in our body. It's very, very difficult to be detected, but there are some common symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, or digestive issues, or anxiety, depression, weight loss or gain weight, frequent infections. All those symptoms, actually, they are highly related to the chronic inflammation in our body. And uh, and it's also true that actually, because it's deeply interconnected with age. So in fact, it's important to say that the chronic low-grade inflammation increases physiologically with age. And the scientists have coined the term inflammaging to describe it. But you know, aging, it's a very complex topic, and it's a very complex mechanism. So why actually in 2023, they have been proposed and identified 12 hallmarks of aging. One of them is the chronic inflammation indeed. So I will talk just quickly about the 12 hallmarks of aging, because it's a very, very complex and scientific topic. But let's say that all the 12 hallmarks of aging are the central contributors to aging and also the age-related diseases. All those hallmarks explain kind of how and why our body deteriorates over the time. And when we talk about the 12 hallmarks of aging, we can actually talk about genomic instability, mitochondrial dysfunction. We can talk about the telomere attrition, the cellular senescence event, and loss of proteostasis. So plenty of different mechanisms. So the point is, yes, all of them, they are unnatural. It's an unstoppable process, but it's also true that through our lifestyle, we can accelerate or decelerate such processes. The point is, how do we want to live our life, and do we actually can somehow to slow down the aging mechanisms? So the answer is yes. Nowadays, we know that according with the strong scientific evidences that we can actually slow down the mechanism, the aging complex machine. Of course, again, we cannot stop it, but we can touch different points and different aspects of our lifestyle. One of them is the nutrition, in order actually to support our body to slow down or kind of to calm down the chronic inflammation in our body, and actually to prevent some chronic conditions that are related, are age related, basically.
What are some of the common age-related diseases linked to chronic inflammation? If you just want to summarize it again, I know you've touched upon it briefly, but maybe just for our listeners.
Yeah, actually, we have different kind of chronic conditions, and most of them can be summarized with the metabolic syndrome. So we can actually experience insulin resistance. For instance, the insulin resistance is one of the major issue that we can face. But it's not only that, we can actually have even cognitive dysfunction. So there are many studies ongoing regarding the connection between the inflammation, even on the brain level, and consequently the side effect, the contraindicate, not the side effect on the cognitive and performance, physical performance. So, and even the cholesterol issue. So hypercholesterolemia, it's another very important point, increasing the visceral fat and consequently having we can disrupt the internal homeostasis, the hormonal fluctuations in our body. So it's really, we can touch multiple diseases. And of course, we can even discuss and talk about the cancer, different kind of cancer. So again, there are many studies ongoing. So we cannot claim that there is a connection. The connection might exist, but we actually have to be very careful, and actually we have to wait for further human studies in order to identify exactly the molecules involved and all the pathways that actually are interconnected between our lifestyle and, in this case, the inflammation, and consequently actually the chronic diseases like the cancer, for instance. But for sure, the cytokines production, pro-inflammatory production, and the stressors that we actually, our body, our environment can provide to us, they can accelerate the inflammation and consequently the risk to develop the chronic conditions.
Thank you, Giorgia. So I find it such an inspiring topic because there's so much we can do about it ourselves. And like you said, inflammation being coined inflammaging because it's linked to all types of health-related problems, such as Alzheimer's. You said neurodegeneration, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, but also autoimmune diseases, like you said, cancers. All of them have been shown to have, at least at some point, some kind of chronic inflammation as a contributing factor, which is, so we can look at, and I'll talk a little bit about where is this inflammation coming from. And you mentioned often it is a trigger that might not even be there anymore, but there's also often research shows that often these triggers, they just linger in the body and they haven't gone away when they should have. For example, chronic infections. Normally we have an infection, and if the immune system does its job, it gets rid of it. But if for whatever reason it doesn't manage to, then these chronic infections can stay in the system and constantly irritate the immune system to create that chronic low-grade inflammation. And then that can cause all these issues that we talked about. Also, if we have, and people often know about the gut microbiome, the bacteria in our gut, different types of bugs in our gut. We want healthy ones in there to keep the gut really nice and strong and the immune system strong but calm at the same time. Now, if we have that imbalance, if we have too many of some bad bugs in there, or we don't have enough good ones in there, which both can be the case, then that makes our gut lining more permeable. And then all of a sudden, particles from the gut can go into the bloodstream, and the immune system doesn't recognize them anymore. Sometimes they can be healthy foods, very healthy foods like almonds, and all of a sudden the immune system says, what is this? There must be an invader trying to attack me. And then it creates inflammation to healthy foods, to bacteria that are coming from the gut into the bloodstream. Also, other factors can cause this low-grade inflammation, like viral load, when the body isn't able to suppress a virus. There's one cytomegalovirus that is very commonly related to low-grade inflammation. But then, like you also said, these inflammatory, this diet-related factors, such as blood sugar spikes, and I see that very often. I'm sure you guys see it over in Montreux as well. People constantly having blood sugar spikes. In particular, also healthy people thinking they're doing the right stuff, but they're constantly eating healthy carbs. And anytime there's a blood sugar spike, it actually causes micro damage to our cells, making the immune system react. They call it something, and I always find it a very fascinating word, advanced glycation end products, because it's short of that is ages, because it makes us age, it makes us rust from the inside. And that's when there's sugar, excess amounts of it attaching to our cells and making the basically changing their structure. And then the immune system starts to attack it. So those are common underlying factors that can lead to low-grade chronic inflammation that then has all these cascading effects. Some other ones are also pollution. Heavy metals are all around us nowadays, but also nutrient deficiencies, because we actually need certain nutrients to quench inflammation, get rid of it. If we don't have enough of them, a very common example is omega-3. If we don't have enough of that, then our body literally just can't get rid of the inflammation. And then there's also B vitamins. And if we're stressed, and most people nowadays that we work with, they're high performing individuals, so they have some type of psychological stress in their life usually. And then they deplete B vitamins, for example, and magnesium, and all these things are important for a process called methylation, which I will pass back to Giorgia in a moment to explain a little more what methylation is, because it is one of these factors that is directly linked to how inflammation affects these hallmarks of aging, these underlying triggers that contribute to all sorts of health decline. So I'll pass that back to you, the DNA impact of inflammation.
Yes, actually, thank you so much. As I was mentioning prior, I would say the genomic is it's part of the aging process, and we can accelerate. And one of the the instability, it's called it's what is the methylation or demethylation on our DNA. So this process, it's part of a big family that is called epigenetic. The epigenetic, I think it's quite a novel topic because we very often we heard about the genetic test, but for instance, the epigenetic, it's something not completely, but quite novel. And the methylation, again, it's one of the main mechanisms involved. I would say that when we talk about the methylation, we have to think about the methylation as the green light or the red light. What does it mean? We have our DNA, and the methylation, it means that we add on one of the base of our DNA, one methyl group. Whenever we add on the methyl group on our DNA, we can actually stop the transcription of our DNA. That's why I call it the red light. Whenever we demethylate, we actually remove such CH3, the methyl group from our DNA. We can actually translate the information on our DNA. That's actually why I call it the green light. So what does it mean in practical? So it means that the transcription of our DNA is so important because actually it can regulate the production of different proteins in our body, and it's fundamental, for instance, when for the growing, when we grow up, actually. So we have to develop all our tissues, all our organs. So it's really important for our body to know exactly how they have to work. They have to be guided. And actually, the DNA can do it with the transcription, with translating the information from the DNA to the proteins. So everything is a perfect machine and it works naturally well. But what's happened is that there are many stressors in our life that actually can affect this natural and perfect machine. Whenever we don't mutilate, we don't switch off or switch on the gene properly, we can kind of create a kind of disbalance in our body. And this balance, it means that we don't produce the right proteins anymore, or we overproduce some particular proteins. So all these different mechanisms can actually lead to conditions, harmful conditions, and some of them are the diseases. So there are again many studies ongoing about the association between the epigenetic factors. One of them is the methylation, as I said, and tumor growth. So actually it's one of the big window is the cancer topic, but it's not only the cancer, it's really related to everything. So how well we can absorb some vitamins, some minerals in our body, if we have a specific polymorphism or not. So it's a very wide topic, and it's related as well to the nutrition, as you were correctly mentioning. If we lack of some particular minerals or vitamins, we can kind of actually to damage, or we can actually support or not our body. So it's really important to know and to avoid the non-natural mechanisms in our body, and working on epigenetic, that it's a reversible process, because the DNA, it's irreversible. We cannot change it, but we can change how our genes behavior. So, and we can do it with, for instance, the methylation or demethylation, and controlling and this specific aspect of the epigenetic, we can kind of to protect our body against the risk to develop harmful conditions, as I already mentioned, cancer, but even inflammation, even, we can actually support the right inflammatory processes. So acute inflammation, it's okay, but the chronic inflammation maybe over the years is not very well accepted in our body. But even the cellular protection, or even how our immune system works. And you were mentioning actually the microbiome. So, the intestine, it's called our second brain. And 70% of our immune system is found on the intestine wall. So, and the immune system is quite a delicate word, and can be affected by, again, different conditions like antibiotics, but even jet lag, could be sleep deprivation, could be stress. So it's really important to take care of our bacteria, the microbiome in general, and because it's also true that the microbiome, and especially the bacteria pattern, is highly associated to our neuron function as well, and the inflammation in our body. So everything, as you can understand, it's very deeply interconnected, and it's like a chain. If we take care of the microbiome, we can actually support our immune system, and this could be a cause effect. So it's really important to, whenever we talk about lifestyle, when we talk about well-being, when we talk about longevity, we have to look at the picture, at the whole picture. And that's why the hallmarks of aging is not only one, but there are 12, you know? And that's why actually when even we talk about supplementation, you were mentioning about the genetic supplement, for instance, you know, some vitamin, the worldwide vitamin deficiencies like vitamin D, or we also have vitamin B12, B complex in general. So especially the vitamin B12. But if you want to look at the longevity and the pure meaning of longevity, and it means not only quantity of life, but even the quality of life, we have to change slightly the concept or how we look at the supplement, because we are not talking about fulfilling any kind of nutritional deficiency, but it's really to kind of to protect and to touch, not probably all of them, but most of them, the 12 hallmarks of aging, because as I said, it's a very complex machine.
Yeah, thanks, Giorgia. That was so interesting. And let's talk a little bit about supplements and then maybe about other things, lifestyle choices and changes people can make in their day-to-day to address their chronic inflammation so they can be actionable after this talk. So you just mentioned these longevity supplements, which I know that Clinique la Prairie has some wonderful ones. But then we've also talked before we jumped on this interview today about the importance of the difference between these specific longevity supplements that are really kind of the tip of the iceberg. They really tweak the very intricate how the hallmarks of aging are communicating our mitochondria. They turn on certain factors that are very specific. But then on the other side, we have these basic supplements or basic nutrients that the people or the organisms need as a starting point. So like we said, for example, omega-3 is really important just to get all the right vitamins, nutrients that the body, this whole machinery in the system needs day to day to function. And so those are things like the B vitamins that help methylation, or the like omega-3s that help to resolute inflammation. Without that, we can't really get rid of inflammation, or fiber to feed our gut microbiome. Those things are really important day-to-day steps. And then there's these wonderful extra supplements, longevity supplements that can really on the next level go into specific detail on how to optimize those hallmarks of aging. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about those specific supplements, and then I'll talk about some dietary lifestyle changes that we can make to optimize.
Yeah, sure. Yes, actually, I was mentioning about the generic supplements like you know, micronutrients and vitamins, and all of them, they're absolutely necessary. Absolutely. So, but we have to introduce even the new generation of supplement that as I said, actually, they work. The goal is different because the goal here is to promote the longevity. And the longevity, when we talk about longevity, we have to take into account two different important aspects. One is the inflammation, as we said, and even the immune system. So the goal of our longevity supplements, we have 4 formulations, basically. So it's called Agify, and we have balance, energy, and purity. And all of them, they work, you know, for purity, to support the liver detoxification and the purification of our body, energy to provide the right energy and vitality to actually to be performant during our life. Then we have balance, that it's a big support, it has a very strong relaxing effect, especially for people with jet lag or, you know, with sleep disorders. And then we have Agify, our gold standard. And the main concept, and it works very well to support our immune system, the natural immune system pathways, and even actually to drop off the inflammation, especially the chronic inflammation. So in any case, the foundation across all our supplements is really to promote and to support and the cellular protection. That's why we also ran a vitro study And actually, we have found how the 5, because the formulation of our supplements is quite complex. So for each of our supplements, we have more than 10 plants extract for each. So it's quite a huge formulation, a great formulation. But we have 5 bioactive ingredients that we call core holistic complex that they have been tested, and after only 4 weeks of treatments, we were able to see the beneficial effects on the telomere length. So it means that if we can protect the telomere length, we can reduce the cellular senescence event. That is one of the 12 hallmarks of aging. And if we can reduce the cellular senescence events, it means that we can drop off the inflammation in our body. Because the cellular senescence event is one of the most important and main factor involved into the inflammation process. So just to explain in a very easy way the different goal of the longevity supplements. And you can find this kind of actually benefit across all the longevity supplements, the 4 formulations, independently, what you want to take, whatever your needs are. So doesn't matter. So those actually are the foundation of longevity. So, and it's really interesting to see whenever we talk about vitamin B complex, omega-3, you see it's one ingredient. Sometimes you can have 1, 2, 3 ingredients in because you have the enhancer ingredients, the stabilizer. So it's actually the formulation is quite, it's very specific. And the dosage is quite high because the goal here is to treat and cure a nutritional deficiency. When we talk about longevity supplements, first of all, it's a long-term treatment because the inflammation, and especially the chronic one, takes time. So the longevity supplements are a long-term treatment, and the dosage is quite moderate in order to not interfere with any other kind of treatments ongoing. And at the same time, the formulation is quite more complex because, as I said, we have more than 10 plants extract for each of them. Everything is vegan. And really, whenever we talk about the plant extract, we have to think about the power of the plants. The Chinese traditional medicine, the Ayurvedic medicine, all of them, they know since I don't know how many years ago the powerful effects of the plants. Nowadays, we have the opportunity to have very high quality and reliable technologies in order to support, even scientifically speaking, the beneficial effects of those plants. Of course, they have to be treated very carefully and with the right balance, the right concentration, the right format, because they are so powerful, but at the same time, the interactions are sometimes quite unstable. So we have to be really careful and to guarantee the maximum security level. But a part of that, so has been recognized, and even the Food and Drug Administration, and we have plenty of scientific publications reporting the beneficial effect, for instance, of fisetin or L-theanine, or we have actually even the shiitake mushrooms, for instance. So all of those ingredients and these particular foods are quite powerful, and that's why we have decided to include some of them in our formulations, and some of our ingredients are patented ingredients. It means that have been tested on humans. They have actually went through clinical trials as well. So and most important, everything is science-based. And I was mentioning just before joining the meeting, we're gonna launch a new supplement soon. And this new supplement, talking about the methylation, it's very specific supplement that it works on the methylation process and the methylation pathways in our body in order to support, to boost in a very gentle and natural way the right functions of our genes. And it's a collaboration with a very well-known laboratory here in Switzerland. So yeah, so stay tuned for eventually for more information, but just to say that it's, it's an ongoing process. Every month, every year, we get news about, thanks to actually the new technologies, new devices, and new algorithm. So actually, we get a lot of new information that we must, as scientists, actually as scientific expertise. So we must to make the bridge between the science behind and people. So, and we try as Clinique to make this possible through the supplements, that it's a daily routine, it's accessible to everyone, providing high quality ingredients and of course very secure formulations, and of course even actually with a very solid scientific based behind. So well, that's actually mainly the biggest difference between the generic supplement and the longevity supplements. I would say that again, it's the complexity of the formulation and really the goal of the treatment, I would say.
Thank you so much, Giorgia. I'm sure that our listeners very much enjoyed that. It was very interesting, the differentiation. And I'm also very excited about your new supplement that is launching soon. I will definitely try it out. So I will just go into a little bit more of a practical day-to-day, some strategies that our listeners can start right away. Obviously, they will want to try out your supplements, but just what they can do right away to help with inflammation. And as we said in the beginning, there are certain factors in our lifestyle, in our environment that cause inflammation. So obviously, getting rid of inflammation would be to try and look at what's causing it. What are there chronic infections? You can test those things. You can do gut microbiome testing. You can measure the nutrient levels that are needed for methylation, for all these different things, and then optimize them. But then you can also do things like you were talking about, having bad sleep or jet lag or stress, how that can contribute to inflammation. So, for example, short-term stress can lower inflammation, but chronic stress has been shown to make the body not respond to that anymore and make us more inflamed. So, a big, huge one is stress. And they found that if we manage to and learn to switch over to the parasympathetic nervous system, that the relaxing, restorative mode, instead of constantly being in that fight or flight mode, that can lower inflammation. And that's all research based. So that's a really easy thing people can do. Just some belly breathing, some saunas, some whatever they'd like to do, meditation, journaling, reading a book. If they're lucky enough to be in a beautiful environment like Switzerland, go hiking in the mountains, looking at greenery, or the beautiful Lake Geneva. All of that has been shown to stimulate the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system, that has been shown to quench inflammation. And also sleep. You mentioned sleep, people that are jet lagged. Research shows that just one night of lack of good quality sleep makes the body slightly more inflamed the next day. I found that so mind-blowing when I read that. So people often they try to do all the right things, but then they're busy, they're CEOs, they're just busy individuals. And then they kind of skimp on sleep because they think that's not that important. But actually, those are the basic cornerstones that are so crucial and that we can influence day to day, just really focusing on sleep, on stress, getting the right nutrients, getting rid of chronic infections, making sure that we're not being polluted with heavy metals all the time, not eating tuna every day because it's full of mercury, for example. So we can obviously measure these things. So I do that a lot with the functional medicine, and I'm sure that you guys do that in Clinique la Prairie, doing gut microbiome testing, heavy metal testing, nutrient levels. So you can actually see where things are missing, where things are too much, and then you can very specifically optimize it. So you get to the root cause of inflammation. And then back to the blood sugar thing that I mentioned in the beginning. Again, I find that a very interesting topic because I see this so often in my patient population, in particular also people that are trying to be healthy, they're still having all these blood sugar spikes from healthy foods. And if they, and I find this a really wonderful tool, is just wearing a blood sugar monitor for 2 weeks, and it's available everywhere. It's very cheap over here. It's £50. It's not a lot. You can wear this monitor for 2 weeks, and you can see on your phone what your blood sugar is doing and how it responds to different foods and drinks, sometimes even stressors. If you are having too much coffee or you're over exercising or you haven't had enough sleep, then your blood sugar control will be different afterwards. So it's fascinating. And then the important part, and you're obviously aware of that, but I just want our listeners to know this, is that when you do all these tests, you want to make sure you optimize it, because the normal blood ranges, the normal blood sugar ranges as well. Therefore, they're basically, you were talking about the red light and the green light before, but there's also often that yellow light, right? Where people are not in the red zone. You're talking about methylation, but we can pull it over to here as well, this analogy. People are often, when they look at the blood sugar, they will only flag it if it's in the red zone, if there is a risk for diabetes. But there's this whole big range in between being already having a full-blown disease and the optimal range. So they found that blood sugar should be very narrow, actually. And any time that blood sugar comes out of that optimal range, so still far away from the danger zone, but every time that comes out, it causes microinflammation. If that happens a couple of times a week for an hour, not a big deal, because the body can heal itself. But if this happens all day long, and I see this all the time, people that overexercise, stress, constantly snack healthy foods, a little bit of fruit here and there, start the day with porridge, constantly these mini spikes in the normal range contribute to microinflammation. And then we can do all these wonderful tools, we can add wonderful supplements, but if we don't address the root at what we do day to day, I always find that's we want to do it hand in hand. We want to make sure that what we do day to day works well for our mechanism and our organism, and then we can add all these wonderful extra specific tools to it. And I'll just pass it back to you if you have to add, if you have any tools that you want to give our listeners.
Yeah, actually, it's fascinating. As you were mentioning, the glucose metabolism, it's quite fascinating. And I totally agree with you about glucose monitoring. I'd recommend to everyone, actually, and it's painless, and it can actually provide to you plenty of different information, especially because each of us is unique. We can respond to, the glucose, but everything in a very different way. So we have different studies reporting how people after eating one cookie actually experience the spike, but another person actually probably doesn't. So, and why? How is it possible? So, everything is personal, and that's why the personalization is the key word when we talk about healthcare. And what we try to do here at the clinic, for instance, the microbiome, we have the personalized microbiome test as well to provide to give actually to our guests the personalized probiotic formula as well, but even for the glycemia. And I was thinking another thing, it came to my mind about, nowadays actually we have this fasting or, these different dietary habits. And some people, they are self-made. So they don't count on any expertise, or they actually just decide suddenly to follow a specific diet, to be on diet. And one of them is the fasting. So again, going back actually to the glucose, we have to be very careful, because having actually the opportunity to see how the glycemia fluctuation goes can actually say, listen, maybe it's not a good decision to skip your breakfast, because probably during the night you experience different hypoglycemia fluctuations. So, and it's a very good signal to say, listen, maybe it's better to keep the breakfast and maybe to skip the dinner. All those little information are highly tailored, highly personalized. And but I think it's really important, as you were mentioning, the price is not very high at all, and you go to the pharmacy and you can easily find it. So we have all the technologies. The only thing is just to be aware, to actually to listen, to actually to join this kind of podcast in order to get informed and to understand, to be educated kind of. Because the point is, as I was mentioning, we have to build up the bridge between the science and people in general. That's why actually, for instance, the information about the glucose monitoring, I think it's totally, should be spread out to everyone. But it's not only that. You were mentioning about some action. Well, action in our life, sleep disorders, it's a big problem. Also about the accumulation of heavy metals and accumulation of proteins in our brain. So it's really important. The quality of our sleep, it's fundamental. And it's not how many hours we sleep, but it's the quality of our sleep. That's why it's actually working overnight, it's not a very good idea. Whenever we jet lag, actually, it's really important to, as soon as possible, to stabilize kind of the internal homeostasis and our circadian rhythm. That's fundamental. But even the physical activity is a great part of our life. The World Health Organization recommends at least 30 minutes per day, but of course, this is, or 150 per week. So it's it's something that we can do it. We are quite good to find out different excuses to say, no, I cannot do it, I'm tired, but we can actually find a lot of time to actually to watch.
To doom scroll on the phone, correct.
Instagram. So whenever you start scrolling your Instagram, say, okay, you know what, stop it. Let's keep, I don't know, let's take the stairs. Let's actually get out for 30 minutes. Fast walking, it's enough. Fast walking. And of course the nutrition and the stress. It's actually, I think, one of the biggest problem that we have right now. So meditation, yoga, Pilates, whatever you want, walking. So there are actually this very nice many studies actually reporting how people living in a green areas, like here, for instance, probably, might be experience less chronic cardiovascular diseases over the time. So this is actually, wow, that's actually a very important information for us. I'm not saying that everyone has to live in the countryside because it's totally impossible, but just actually to be aware about impact of the environment on our health. And it's not only, numbers, it's not only words, talk, or no, it's real. And we can take some action. Let's try to not scrolling your Instagram before going to bed. Don't eat any kind of sugar at dinner. Let's try to stay away from alcohol at dinner, or maybe actually to not exercise in the evening because you can activate your brain. But maybe you can actually read a book. You can actually even do a very, do some meditation, some very relaxing activities, I would say. Of course, I would say like coffee or tea, maybe not the second part of the day. It's much better to keep it the first part of the day, because some people, they can easily metabolize the caffeine, but not the tea. So what I do recommend, and the only way is running a specific test in order to see if you are a low metabolizer, as low metabolizer, or a fast metabolizer. So just in case, maybe it's better, you can try, and otherwise you can actually trying as much as possible to keep all these stimulant ingredients the first part of the day. So there are many actually tips, and the only thing is really trying to take an action. Let's start with very small steps. You don't have to do great, like a half marathon. No, it's not that. Step by step. Let's try actually to throw away all the junk food you have at home, the refined sugar, whatever. Actually, let's try to reduce the alcohol intake if you drink more than 1-2 glasses per day, for instance. So there are little, and of course the processed food. So all this kind of little advices, I would say it's not a big change. And don't blame yourself. So if you cannot do it, it's the first time doesn't work, let's try the second one and move on. We are humans, we can fall down, it's normal, but you have to keep moving on the right direction. So this is actually the goal. And having all the information needed in order to actually to take the right way, you cannot actually fail. I'm 100% sure, but everything has to start here. So, and then we can talk about supplementation, we can talk about everything, but if you want to do it, let's start with very small steps, and with, of course, a good actually expert by your side.
Thanks so much, Giorgia. I'm sure that the people listening loved all of that advice. It was so actionable. I love you don't have to do it all at once. Just get started, baby steps, slowly build on that. And you don't have to do things perfectly. Just slowly, little things, add to it, and eventually it accumulates to be a massive snowball that really helps you feel better for longer. That's our goal, right? Quenching that inflammation so that we live longer. You touched upon health span right in the beginning, not just living longer, but living better quality, right? That's the whole point of our work at Clinique la Prairie, what I do over here with my private clinic. We're looking to optimize health span, longevity, not just living longer, but putting life and quality of life into those years. Thank you so much, Giorgia. That was so interesting. I will put some links to the different supplements and different topics into the chat below the video for people that are interested in finding out more. And have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Mirthe. It was a big pleasure, and thanks to all of you for for joining and for listening. Thank you.